I wanted to examine a little more closely some of the things you talked about. The consumer side looking strong, the business side weakening. And I want to compare that and ask you, what are some of the triggers to the weakening on the business side? As I look at the chart, trade policy uncertainty, you said it's no question uncertainty is elevated. What would greater certainty look like? What are some of the things creating the uncertainty? What would greater certainty look like? And then what would the impact be on the economy?
So we think that the place where uncertainty is showing up is in business investment. Businesses make investments, and those have to work for a longer period of time. When businesses become uncertain about the future and about future demand, they may hold off. They may decide to wait before they build something or buy something, and they may just hold off. So what we're seeing is business fixed investment, which was quite strong. Business investment was very strong right through 17 and most of 18. It's really slowed down now in the middle of the year, and we do connect that. There's no perfect way to identify these things, but we do connect that to trade policy uncertainty and also uncertainty about global growth and weak manufacturing around the world. What
specifically in trade policy do you think is connected to that pulling back on investment?
I think it's just there have been trading. You know, the people who are responsible for trade, and that's not us. We don't criticize them for what they do. We have a broad series of trade discussions going on. If you're a manufacturing company in our economy of any size, the chances are pretty good that your supply chain goes across national borders to Canada or Mexico or China or Vietnam or someplace. And that supply chain is really part of the way you do business, and you just assume that it's working and you can focus on your clients. When the supply chain is called into question, and we hear this a lot from businesses, by the way, when it's called into question, you pull back and you have less certainty about how this is going to work. You may have to change it. Many companies have changed their supply chain away from China now, but many of them had moved to Mexico or Vietnam, and now, so I just think that uncertainty is something that we call out for the economy. But again, I wouldn't want to suggest that in any way is a criticism of those who are conducting the policy. We don't have a responsibility for evaluating that. That's for them.
I understand and appreciate your independence there. I'm hearing the same thing on the ground from my businesses in Montgomery and Berks counties, Pennsylvania. The uncertainty, the fickle trade policy, the fickle tariff policy, the punitive tariff policy is driving their conservatism in their own areas. Let me shift to something else that you talked about, and I care deeply about gun violence, the opioid crisis, and I'm wondering, through your complex lens, could you talk about the opioid crisis and/or gun violence? One of the recent reports on gun violence says that gun violence in this country costs our economy somewhere in the area of $230 billion a year. And I know you are not involved in gun policy or the opioid crisis policy, but through your lens and through the tools that you're using, what are you seeing? What could we in Congress learn about how we could minimize, reduce that economic impact?
I can probably do a little better talking about opioids, where there's been some great research, including by the late labor economist Alan Kruger, who sadly passed away last year, or maybe earlier this year, about the effect of the opioid crisis. So if you take the prime age men in certain age groups who are out of the labor force, an extraordinary percentage of them, I think the number was 44%, are taking some kind of painkiller. So it's a big number. It's a big number of people that are on opioids and, for the most part, missing from the labor force. We all want, the U.S. economy to grow faster and be larger, and we want prosperity to be broadly shared. Here are people who are in the prime working years who are on opioids, and it's a national crisis. And I know people are working on it, but it's out there, and there's a human tragedy, but there's also an economic motivation to get these people into the labor force where they can lead healthy lives.